You're listening to NorthWoods Church Matters, a podcast of NorthWoods Church in Evansville, Indiana, where we discuss why the local church matters and things that matter to the local church. I'm your host, Matt Higgins. Hey, well, welcome back to the NorthWoods Church Matters podcast. I have a friend from a long time ago here in the hot seat this morning. Mr. Bobby Pell is back amongst the living here.
Preach.
Yeah, you've just come back from a 2-month sabbatical, so let's start off with the question, what is a sabbatical?
A sabbatical is a period of time that you take away for the purpose of resting. Biblically, we have a Sabbath, which is one day out of every 7, and our church has a sabbatical policy for those who work here. I was the first person who took advantage of that policy. If you work for 7 years full-time as a pastor, you can take up to 2 months off for the purpose of rest, for the purpose of almost recalibrating, if you would. And in my case, because of the way I'm wired, it took some period of time to learn and to do some work on my doctorate.
Yep.
And get some of that knocked out of the way.
Easy work.
Yes, easy work.
So what exactly happened while you were on your sabbatical? Did you go to Hawaii or Mexico, some exotic destination?
I went to neither of those locations. Let's see. My first week spent at a conference in Texas with Rachel and Alec Bland at Watermark Church in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Flew from Dallas-Fort Worth to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and spent some time at the very beginning of the sabbaticals seeing my mom and dad. My mom and dad are getting to be elderly. My mom just turned 88. My dad's about to turn 88.
Wow.
It was an opportunity to check on them. And I learned really while I was there, they are getting elderly. That was an important trip. I went from there to back here to Evansville. I think I was here 2 or 3 days. And then Amy and I drove to Des Moines, Iowa, where Ryan graduated law school. And so we spent some time there celebrating Ryan and our youngest son and his graduation from Drake Law School in Des Moines. Came back here. I was here for maybe a week and a half or 2. And Ryan and I, at the end of May, went on a cruise ship. We went on a cruise together out of New York City to Nova Scotia, Canada.
Cool.
That was a lot of fun. I think it was good for our relationship. We had just a good, enjoyable time and had a lot of fun.
Did you talk a lot of Star Wars?
We talked some nerd. Yeah, Ryan's a little bit of a nerd.
Yeah.
And so we also talked some church history. Ryan loves church history.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a really good time. I came back from there, came here to Evansville. Amy went to be with Garrett in a sort of a previously planned trip. I think she was there with Garrett a week and a half or so. They went from Montana to Idaho. Garrett lives in the Cody, Wyoming area.
Mm-hmm.
And then she came back and we hung out here in Evansville and then went back to Chattanooga at the very end of the sabbatical to check on my mom and dad one more time. During the sabbatical, I did work on my doctorate. Your doctorate has 5 chapters. I was able to get 3 chapters done.
Which is great.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
I know you're aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was scheduled to graduate in May of 24, but they have had me apply to graduate for December of 23.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really one of the things that was my goal. I met with 4 pastors,
mm-hmm.
3 or 4 pastors who I was able to ask questions of, and that was beneficial. Learning from them and learning what other pastors are doing. We visited 8 different churches during that time.
So you went to church?
I did. I went to church. I really did try to unplug from NorthWoods.
Right. Yeah.
People ask me, well, how did attendance go? I have no idea. I didn't know till today.
Right.
How attendance had gone.
Right. And you and I have talked about that it's unusual that pastors get to go and visit other churches.
That's right.
And so there's something to be said about going and worshiping in a different church and experiencing what they do and getting some ideas and evaluating what we do here and how it compares to other churches.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I went to Christian Fellowship Church, I'll tell you, and I very much was ministered to by that congregation. The sermon preached by Dale Beavers. He did a great job. But I'll also say this, and I told you this in a meeting you and I had earlier today, Matt. I think our worship team is as good as any worship team I heard.
That's right.
We do a good job engaging the congregation in worship, which is one of the ways that I really value and evaluate a congregation's worship is, are they participating? I walked away being blessed, but also being encouraged by looking at how our church does what it does. And that was really good. It was good for me to be able to walk through that. This may sound bad, but in my own personal devotions, walking into the sabbatical, I'd really gotten stuck. I'd gotten stuck I journal through the scriptures, and I'd gotten stuck in Ezekiel. And one of the blessings that really happened in the sabbatical was I was able to get through and get past Ezekiel.
Yeah. Were you inspired to lay on your side for 30 days?
There's some pretty unusual stuff there.
Yeah. Cook food with your poop.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. There's just some stuff, man.
Yeah.
And so I got past Ezekiel, got through Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, and Obadiah, was able to push through some of that. And that was helpful. I mean, just in my own spiritual life, devotional life. I come to church Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and most every morning that I come to church, I'm studying. I wasn't studying on sabbatical, not for a sermon.
Yeah.
And so this gave me an opportunity to pull back and to say, okay, well, I'm not reading for NorthWoods. I'm reading for me.
Yeah. And every seminary, they warn you.
Yes, that's right.
Before you graduate, that reading devotionally is not the same as studying for a sermon.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There is a sort of a push-pull there, because like when I'm reading to study for a sermon in Nehemiah, I am learning for me. But it's not identical.
Yeah, it's not the same.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same. And so I just think from a spiritual perspective, that was helpful.
Yeah.
To recognize, if you would, that I need to love Jesus more than I do his bride and spend time with him for him. And I found a radio station, 91.9. Somebody else can tell me what that is, but it doesn't even do Christian music. It only has sermons. And I made an intentional decision once I found that was pretty much all I listened to. So every time I got into the car, I was listening to God's word being preached into my life. And it was just helpful to make some decisions like that.
Yeah. So you studied through Ezekiel. What are some big ideas that you learned from that?
A couple of things I'd say. One is that God spoke to Ezekiel in ways and giving images that he never gives to anybody else. And I believe that part of that is because of the way Ezekiel was wired. And that God utilized him in some interesting and unique ways, but he communicates to him recognizing who he is. I believe he was a visual learner.
Yeah.
And I believe that's one of the reasons why God did what he did and how he communicated to Ezekiel. Ezekiel clearly experienced tactily the word of the Lord.
Yeah.
And then he communicated that to the people of Israel.
Yeah.
And so I found that very interesting. But then the other piece to that is God takes sin serious. And I'm now in the Minor Prophets, and there is this principle that keeps going over and over and over again, which is God doesn't take sin lightly. I mean, I just finished Amos, which ends up with saying, prepare to meet your God.
Yeah.
So you get into all of this principle that says you need to be ready because God takes sin very seriously.
Yeah. Ezekiel's a very hopeful book, but also a very sad book at the same time. That Ezekiel, you have the imagery of God through Christ giving a new heart to the people and and building out a new nation out of dry bones. But then the end of Ezekiel, you have the Spirit of God leaving the temple.
That's right.
And what a sad picture to end on, is just the Spirit of God that's supposed to indwell the temple is just gone.
Yeah.
And what a warning to us as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. I can tell you I missed the church. And I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
And grateful to see that I think the church did well while I was gone.
Yeah. How was the sabbatical good for you?
I think in some weird ways, about a month into the sabbatical, I recognized, okay, I'm not going back to church yet. It's a 2-month sabbatical. At 6 weeks, about 2 weeks ago, I went to McDonald's to get a breakfast sandwich. On the way home, Matt, this sounds very charismatic, but on my way home, I said to myself, I feel lighter. I got home and I told Amy, I said, Amy, I don't know how to explain this. This is 6 weeks in. I said, I feel lighter.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've just been carrying stress and stuff. And it was just your way of life.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a moment, and still do to this day, where I don't feel burdened.
Yeah.
And I think to that degree, the sabbatical was helpful.
Well, there's lots of scientific studies about the number of days or weeks it takes for the human body to unwind.
To decompress.
To decompress. And it's not 1 week, which is what we usually take for vacation. Usually about the time that we're getting ready to head back from where we're at is about the time we start thinking about or start beginning to feel like we're unwinding a little bit.
That's right. Yeah, I'm so very grateful for our elders creating a sabbatical policy. And I can say that now, having gone through it, that like I needed to be able to step back and step away from NorthWoods. Like I watched part of 2 sermons. I watched Terry Thompson preach for about 5 minutes, and I watched Jamie Dew preach for about 15. I didn't watch NorthWoods online. I had no idea what our attendance was. I had no idea about any of this stuff, about how things were going around here. What I did was I had to make an intentional decision. I'm going to trust the Lord with that.
Yeah.
If NorthWoods can't handle me being gone for 2 months, we got a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, NorthWoods can handle me being gone, but most importantly, it's God's church.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is His people.
Yeah.
I had to step back and say, okay, God's going to handle the congregation. I need to focus on the Lord, and I need to allow Him to do whatever He's going to do in me. And sounds, once again, odd to say this, but He did do something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a charismatic, but I feel lighter.
Good.
I feel lighter. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to say something I shouldn't say. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do something I shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought you were going to say for a second that McDonald's coffee made you get up and holler or something like that. But what you said is probably a lot better than that.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But I think what people don't understand is the thing about shepherding is a real thing. Like behind the scenes, a lot of what we discuss is how we care for people and how we can do the best for people and help them to seek the Lord and do better in their situation based on what the Lord desires from them. And there's a burden that comes from that. Jamie Dew, when he was here last week, I asked him what a seminary president does, and he described it as, I'm a dad to a lot of people. And I think in that way, that's an illustration that's easy to understand about pastoring, because we have kids and there's a certain burden when you have kids about responsibility. And it's the same somewhat when we're pastors as well, that there's a level of responsibility that we take for people that people often don't see behind the scenes. We genuinely do care. We talk about you, we pray for you, and not talk about you in a bad way, but like we would talk about our children.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the book of Hebrews describes our responsibility as that we will give an account.
Yeah.
And if you sit back and you take that seriously, then we better talk about you.
Yeah.
We better be thinking about you, because our responsibility, we have some spiritual accounting for your life, fully recognizing that every individual who this is their church, in the end, it's your decision.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that your sinful decision, your ungodly decision does not affect us.
Right.
Because it does.
Yeah. Yeah. We really do weep with those that weep and mourn with those who mourn. And
right.
We're not celebrating your failures and we're not cursing at you at your victories. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah. When we hear something about transgender, we hear something about homosexuality, hear something about adultery, hear something about thievery or lying or cheating or stealing that's happening in our congregation, it hurts us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we are connected.
And there's a burden that goes with shepherding. And so it's good to take away and
that's right.
And step away for a little while and not feel that for a little while.
That's right.
Yeah.
7 years, it may happen again. Who knows?
Right. Maybe we'll get that trip to Mexico someday. All right. Well, let's talk about one thing that's been on a lot of people's minds and they're excited about. What's going to be happening over the next couple weeks, months with the building program?
I don't think that you're going to hear anything in front of the congregation till probably September.
Mm-hmm.
But there is going to be some behind-the-scenes work. We have a team that has been put together who's going to lead the campaign, the Rethink campaign. And There are going to be quite a few other people who are going to be recruited to help us go through the Rethink campaign from within our congregation. And then there'll be an announcement sometime in September that simply says, guys, this is what's about to happen. Here's the goal. And I think that we're going to have 4 sermons at the end of October and the beginning of November, leading into a banquet and leading into a pledge Sunday.
Yeah.
And so our desire is that the congregation will have a vision for recognizing that we have to financially be at a place to where if we're going to build, we got to pay for it.
Yeah.
Our elders have been very clear that they do not want to lead our congregation into generational debt. And so we want to stay away from that. And Matt, to be very honest, I have this perspective that says, because I think we have to raise a minimum of $1.5 million. But if the entire project is, let's say, $3.5 million, God could raise the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what God's doing in the lives of our people.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know that God has all the money he ever needs. And the issue is just in each person's life, we need to figure out how can we be generous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
The Rethink campaign, one of the things that it does is it involves our lay people, not our staff.
Right.
And so to a great degree, our staff is sitting off to the side watching this like everybody else.
Right. Yeah. But at the same time, people shouldn't think that the building program has been dormant since you.
That's right.
There's been things going on behind the scenes, things that have to happen, recruiting people, getting volunteers, working on plans, those type of things. And so there was a good moment where you were quoting Jesus, wherever 2 or more gather in my name, I agree with you before sabbatical. So yeah, that was fun. Yeah. All right. So you're preaching again. So,
I am.
Yeah. So what are you going to be preaching on?
This coming Sunday, we're starting a series called Restored out of Nehemiah.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do that for 10 or 12 weeks and looking forward to walking through the book of Nehemiah as Nehemiah leads the children of Israel in rebuilding broken down walls. And no, we did not choose this idea because we're going into a building campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make that
right.
clear.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really looking forward to going through the series of Nehemiah. We'll do Nehemiah chapter 1 this coming Sunday on the 9th of July and looking forward to where this is going to take us.
That's great. Anything else you want to mention about church life?
Yeah, I would just say I love our church. Very grateful for it. I'm grateful for the blessing of the sabbatical. I'm grateful that when this first came about, our elders have been talking about it for a couple of years, and I didn't want to take a sabbatical until there was a policy because it would affect all of our pastors at that point. And I'm grateful that a policy has been adopted. If any of our congregation would like to see the policy, it was given out earlier this year. But if our congregation would like to see the policy, just send an email to one of our secretaries or to one of us, and we'll make sure that you get one. We'd love to be able to pass that along to you. But I think this is a great way to be able to bless the congregation and to bless the pastors within our church for faithful service.
Amen to that. Well, welcome back.
Thanks very much.
All right. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the NorthWoods Church Matters podcast. If you'd like to find out more about NorthWoods Church, you can visit us at our website, www.northwoodschurch.org. Again, that's www.northwoodschurch.org.